I want to talk about, refugees writ large, but the idea of separating children from their parents, and maybe you can help me out on this. As far as I can tell, the only justification that even the administration has given for this new policy is some type of draconian form of punishment, right? I mean, like, this is just supposed to be, we're going to teach you a lesson type of thing. Is there any other justification for this that even they are offering?
Well, they've said a number of different things. John Kelly, a little bit more than a year ago, this is a few months into the beginning of the Trump administration, talked about separating children from their parents who had crossed the border or who had even presented at the border, and that's an important distinction to make, and maybe we'll talk more about that, requesting asylum as a means of deterrence. So I think punishment and deterrence here go hand in hand. Yes, they are effectively punishing the parents and the children. I mean, this is a terrible, terrible process for all involved. But it's not just to slap them on the wrist, and it's doing a lot more than that, actually. I think it amounts, in some cases, to torture. It's not only to punish them, but it's also to send a message. You know, it's really a form of shock advertising. It's frightening the bejesus out of other people who may want to try to do the same thing. But, and I think this speaks to the real need for actually protecting these people, that it's not working. We haven't seen any evidence of it working so far. And what that means is that people are in very real need of protection, of asylum, of some sort of status that gives them a way to live outside of their home countries where they're being persecuted, tortured, or otherwise harmed.
I want to make the point you just made really crystal clear for people, because there's this other misapprehension I think that is out there, that the reason why people cross the border is for very casual reasons. And particularly when we're talking about children coming across the border, as if it's like, I'm just going to go to the land of milk and honey. I have a good life where I am at now, but I just want to upgrade because I want, the latest fashions or whatever it is, as if it's like, just some type of vacation that people feel like they're taking. They are aware that their children could be separated from them, and anybody who's a parent understands what the implications of that are. Yet, the reason why people are crossing this border is because this is a push system, right? They're not being pulled necessarily by the visions of milk and honey in the United States. They are being pushed from their homes because they are living in conditions that are an existential threat to them. I don't think people fully get that in a lot of these cases.
Right. And I think that could be best illustrated by telling stories of these actual people who are doing it. Yes, they're leaving, political persecution or persecution based on gender, race, religion, a number of other issues. But when you actually listen to some of these stories, you really understand. One of the women that I spoke with, young 26-year-old woman, she was living in northern Mexico in Juarez, a city that has had lots of trouble and violence for the number of years. She was actually kidnapped into a prison. The father of her child kidnapped her while she was visiting him inside of his prison cell. He was a member of the cartel. He ran a prison. He beat her horribly inside. He got so scared that she was dying that he let her call her family. She was basically rescued out of prison. And when she went to report it to the prison officials and subsequently the police, both of which those agencies were in cahoots with the cartel, she was threatened again. Her child was removed from her. Her child was 6 months old at this time. Within about 24 hours, she presented at the port of entry in El Paso and asked for asylum. That is a completely legal, lawful act under both U.S. law and international law. So she was so scared. She was had been very recently physically abused, and she presented at the port of entry, and they actually let her in for a little while. They put a shackle on her, a GPS monitoring anklet on her, but a few weeks later, ICE took her into custody and separated her from her 6-month-old child, who she was currently breastfeeding. She was in detention for 8 months. Her child stopped recognizing her as his mother. She was forced to stop breastfeeding. She was allowed once every 2-week contact visits with her child. And, you know, here we have, I think, all parts of this story here. She was in very real need of protection. She came specifically to ask for that. She broke 0 laws. No one ever charged her of breaking any laws. And yet she was forcefully separated from her breastfeeding infant. And she was separated from him for 8 months. And that has extreme consequences, not only on her, she described it as worse torture than she suffered inside of a prison in Juarez. But that is going to probably have lasting effects on that child. And this is one of hundreds and hundreds of cases that we're seeing right now.